Hi there, and welcome to the Airplane Spoon podcast, real questions and real stories about feeding children. I'm Sarina Murrell, director and feeding therapist at the Airplane Spoon. And today I want to talk to you about something that is this big mystery and so common. And if you're anything like any of the families I support, you probably have a bunch of these. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about cups. Cups, 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 cups. So today's question is, what kind of cup should my child use? I get it. I go into a home and a lot of times families have this cupboard and they open it up and there's just all these cups there, different types of cups. They're falling out, and which kind of cup does your child use? And they've tried lots of different cups, and some might work well and some might not, especially for babies as they're learning how to drink. There's a ton of different products out there to learn how to drink from cups. And even for children, they lose them all the time. It's like one of the number one things that are in the lost and found at different like daycares or preschools or schools. It's just a bunch of cups. And so let's talk about cups today. What cup should my child use? But before I get into cups, I want to talk to you about two things that is related and important. And the first one is, if you have heard me speak before, or you work with me, or you know me, you have probably heard me say that there are parent products and there are child products. What do I mean by this? There are products that are designed basically to get parents to buy more. These are companies, and parents are a very vulnerable customer bank, because they're worried and they want what's best and they don't really know. And so then they buy. And so marketing from these companies are getting parents to feel worried so that they buy. And they buy more, and they buy more. One area of this that I give an example of is with baby bottles. That there's all these different size nipples, and there's all these different attachments, and that's a parent product. Because if a child's eating very well, you don't have to change the flow or the nipple size just because this is for 0 to 3 months or this is for 3 to 6 months. You don't have to. It's a parent product to get them to buy more. Now, child product is designed for helping a child at whatever stage of their development is at. But if that works really well and you can just keep using that, that's not really great for these companies. And so just know that these companies often are marketing and designing this for parents to feel very worried so that they buy more. Okay? So what my hope is for today is that to give you some idea and more strategies and tips around cups and how are they designed, not just for parents in mind. And I get it. It's great to have cups that can not be spilled everywhere. And that's a lot of a big parent priority in terms of parent products and anti-spill. But also, what's going on in your child's mouth? How does that help with your child's swallowing and drinking skills? And to just be more informed about that. So you can think about this maybe through a different lens and to see what options out there could work best for your family, for your child. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is the act of drinking. Before we get into the cups themselves, let me just explain to you that the transfer of a liquid from a vessel, whether that's breast or bottle or cup, to the mouth and then to the back of the throat to go down is a complex process. Swallowing is very complex, and swallowing looks very differently if a baby is drinking from a breast or a bottle than if they're drinking from a straw or an open cup. What's going on in the mouth is very different as well. So when a baby is drinking, they're using two things. They're using their jaw to compress. They're going up and down, kind of like to chomp. That's them trying to pull the milk out by chomping on it, whether that's at breast or bottle. And then their tongue is pumping in and out, kind of like, and that's suction to pull the liquid out on top of their tongue. So the tip of the nipple, whether it's a breast nipple or a bottle nipple, is sitting on top of the tongue, way in the back, and the tongue is pumping in and out as the jaw is going up and down. The liquid is going way, way, way here in the back of the mouth, and it just goes straight down to swallow. But if we're drinking from a straw, ideally, we'll talk about this a little bit more when I talk about straw cups, we want the straw to be at the edge of our lips. So that liquid comes in at the front and has to go all the way to the back to go down. And we're using our lips to pull the liquid, not our jaw, to open and close. And an open cup, we're tipping, and it's just flowing in. I don't have to use suction. I don't have to use compression. It's just falling in my mouth. And I need to protect at the back of my mouth because we have two tubes in our throat. We have a front tube here, the trachea, that goes down into our lungs for breathing. That's our air tube, right? It's at the front. It's very hard. It's very bumpy, so that it doesn't collapse. And that one's always open. And in the back of, behind that, in the back of the throat, is this really, really skinny tube that is usually kind of suctioned close like a balloon. And then it opens up when it's time to swallow, and then it kind of suctions back down. That's the esophagus that goes down into our stomach when we have liquid or foods to swallow for eating. And so two tubes here can make it a little complicated because we have to protect our airway. We have to close off our air tube when we swallow liquids or food so it doesn't go the wrong way. We don't want food going down into our lungs or liquid to go down into our lungs. Now, what I want to say here, this is called aspiration. If you have anything going down into the airway, but we all do this sometimes. We all have this miscoordination of timing because it's very, very fast. And so if you're drinking and you did not protect, you cough it out. We all have aspiration moments. The question is this happening very rarely and just sometimes because we were laughing or we got distracted or maybe we tried to like hiccup when we were trying to swallow? Body has lots of weird things going on. Or is it happening most of the time that every time they're swallowing, then a little of it's going the wrong way? That's more concerning. And having medical support from your child's doctor, feeding therapist, having a swallow study to determine if there's a swallow need is going to be important if that's what's going on. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But I wanted to think about drinking is important of how we swallow liquids, and how do we get those in is the types of cups we have. Okay? All right, so let's get into the cups. The first kind of cups I want to talk about are usually the first cups that parents think about when they are trying to transition their child from a bottle, or it's the most like common, been around a long time, and that is sippy cups. Sippy cups can look a lot of different ways. I would say this is probably more the classic sippy cup style, where it is a hard top, a hard spout. And this one is actually on a baby bottle where it can be replaced. And there's a lot of those out there now where you can change out the top of the nipple head and make it maybe a straw or more of like a soft spout. Oh, kind of like this, right? This one is a silicone top of a cup. These have little handles to hold them. And sippy cups have different ways of drinking. So this sippy cup, there's two types. You want to know, is it like a non-spill or not? Most of the time they are non-spill. Now with non-spill, there's an extra level of oral skill to get the liquid out. If this was just an open hole, then if you tip it, it's just gonna dribble. And so that actually helps the child to learn an open cup, kind of like this, without flooding their whole face. It would just dribble. And they can suck on it and get more out, but it's still coming out if it was just an open hole. But for the most time, there's usually like a little valve or a stopper in there that it turns into a non-spill, so they actually have to suck it out. So it's kind of like a bottle. You're tipping your head back and you're sucking. On a hard spout, it's not soft, so you can't use compression, right? How the baby is chewing on a top of a bottle. On a soft spout, you can, right? You can use compression. You can use your tongue to draw it out. This is pretty close to a bottle. It's not really like changing it that much. And they've got these little like X's in here that keep it to be a non-spill. And so it's similar to a bottle in the way that it's drinking. You can't get compression on this one. A lot of times the concern about sippy cups are bad is from the pediatric dentist. What they're saying is that we don't want children to just be walking around with something hanging out of their mouth. It's a lot easier to do with a bottle or with a silicone sippy cup because they're just going to bite it. They're going to walk around. It's just hanging out of their mouth, right? So it's keeping the mouth open and it's keeping the lips open. It's keeping the tongue kind of down because there's something there. So it's going to change how the teeth form. It's going to change how the jaw and the mouth form. It may affect speech. And so we just don't want something in the mouth, even if it's like a pacifier or a thumb. All of those are going to change the shape of the mouth. And especially a hard spouted sippy cup. I can't even bite it because it's so slidey. But if they bite it and they're holding it all the time, then they're using an open mouth to breathe, and it's going to move their teeth. It's going to create this space, this gap. We see this little like open gap in the front of the teeth, and that's either they're biting on their sippy cup all the time, they're a thumb sucker, pacifier user, they have this mouth shape. Their teeth are very moldable. So that's the big concern when people say sippy cups are bad. Now sippy cups aren't bad, but they don't necessarily teach a child how to change their swallowing patterns if it looks a lot like a bottle. Now that being said, I have a little girl. Actually, she's not that little. She's about 14 years old, but she has different developmental disability. And so she gets most of her nutrition from a G-tube in her stomach, but she's learning how to drink and how to eat for pleasure and for minimal, just to get the flavors and to be part of mealtime. So her mom has a cup very similar to this, and what she did is she actually cut off the little valve closures here at the top. She just cut in and removed that part. So when it tips, it pours and it just uses gravity, but it's again not flooding and spilling all over her face. And so she gets a little bit and she can swallow that. And so that's great. That works really well for her. Her parents have no issue with it being a sippy cup. And if it works, use it. You don't have to necessarily stop using something just because you're thinking I have to use a cup, a straw cup, or use something else if it works, especially if your child has differences in their development that affects, their learning, their growth, their understanding. If it works and parents are fine with that, that's fine. And I do like the handles and the independence and everything on this. But just note that there's a parent product side of this too. The bottle companies are doing this so you can attach and keep buying more of their products. Okay, and then is it not something else to then have to graduate to if you're going to then move into a straw cup or into an open cup? Is it a phase? Okay, so that's sippy cups. I have another cup that's kind of like in between a sippy cup and an open cup, and that's this kind of cup. Have you seen this cup before? It's called a 360 cup, and this one's very big. Like the cup itself is very big. It can be just a regular cup, but it has this lid on it, and if you take, this is a tool, a tip I teach to parents, you pop this whole silicone top out. It's very easy to wash that way. Otherwise, it's very hard to wash. But it has all these holes to block the flow so it doesn't pour. But even this way, it's going to dribble. There's a lot of holes. So this little top, you just push it in, and it clicks in. Now, what this does, this is a parent cup. It's anti-spill. So if I put some water in here, let me do it this way. If I put some water in, and if I just take this, you're going to see that it pours, but it's coming out the holes, and so it's limiting the flow. It's not like just pouring all out like if I were to tip here. But if I put the lid on, right, this has water in it. So if I put the lid back on, then what's going to happen here? It's an anti-spill lid, this silicone rim. So it's called a 360 cup because you can drink around any edge. But what you have to do is you have to suck. It's almost like a straw when you suck. And so, but you can suck around any edge. This is really nice for jaw stabilization because it's very hard. So a child could bite on it, but they have to know how to use their lips to suck. So it could work for some children if they can figure it out. For some they can't, and for some it's just a nice little like slow the flow cup if parents pop the top off. This is a different type of cup. Okay? Then, I have one similar to that. This one is also similar. It has this insert lid. It's called Reflow, if you can see that. And it comes with these, kind of like a restaurant cup, and it just inserts in here. So, same thing. I'm going to pour some water in here to show you. Let me close that tight. Okay. So, if you put some water in, this is just a cup. So this is a little bit of a blocker, and it has little tiny like divots all around the side. And so again, if I pour it, it slows it. So it's not gushing out. This can be a nice pour that it blocks it to help with open cup learning. It's kind of a big cup for little hands, but it can be a nice one to slow the flow, to learn about tipping and open cups without it all pouring out. Okay, so open cups, let's talk about them. Open cups can look a lot of different ways. Open cups can just be a standard cup, right? There's plastic, there's metal, there's silicone, there's all different types. And they have these like little silicone cups. They're squishy. This one's weighted. They're pretty heavy, and that's supposed to help so that you don't just kind of fling it, because this is a paper cup, right? This is very light, right? So you could just pour it all over your head. So how I teach open cups, and you can start really early. You can start when you start solids, maybe 6, 8, 10 months old, with a child, with a baby, even though they're still drinking primarily from a bottle or breast for their milk. If they're learning how to eat, you can introduce an open cup. How I like to introduce an open cup is, at first, this is guided and held by a parent or an adult caregiver, is you want to fill it up all the way, I don't know if you can see that, to the top. And what you're going to do is you're just going to kind of put it here, and they're going to stick their tongue out and maybe lap at it like that, or they might suck and learn. I can rest it on my lip and suck. And that's going to be that initial teaching of cup. This is a cup. I drink from it. Then what I do is I pour out everything except for basically a tiny little bit, which would be a mouthful. Now there's like nothing in this cup. So then for a child, they have to learn to tip. Tip, 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 tip. Even if they tip the whole thing, it's a very tiny amount. So they learn this tip. First we're just here, and then we're tip. So then they can learn the in-between. That's how I teach, starting with open cups. But no, it's just gonna spill. So whatever shirt they're wearing, it's gonna get wet. Water is obviously easier than if you did milk or juice, but you can do other drinks. Do it before bedtime. Do it in the bath. I meant before bath time, not before bedtime. If you're gonna do it like dinner and then they're gonna take a bath, and so you can maybe have no shirt on all, or they're just gonna get wet anyway. I even sometimes like to have like a little cup for kids to practice drinking in the bath, so they can pour it all over them if they wanted, but they could try that. Not the bath water, obviously. Okay, and so thus open cups, there's all different types, but I just want you to be a little bit considerate about the size of the open cup, right? We have a small child, small face. The thing about open cups that can be a little bit scary is if it's going over their whole face. So this child, small, this is obviously much smaller than a baby size, but when we're putting a cup up, how much of it is it covering my face? I would say this is a pretty standard size cup I could drink from. Maybe it's a little bit small, but watch when I tip it. I can still see. It comes up to right about my nose level. Okay, but this is a big cup. If I were to try to drink from this cup, watch. It covers my eyes. And so I feel like I don't want to drink from this cup like this because it's too big. Okay? And sometimes for kids, these cups are so big, they're covering their whole face, right? If I were to use this cup on a child, it's going to cover their whole face. And that is going to be very scary, that they don't want to use those cups. That would be like me trying to drink from a bucket. It's going to, I don't want to put my head inside of a bucket. How big is the cup? It should be proportionate to the size of the child. Okay, I have one special cup here I'm going to show you. It looks like this. You see that? I have two different sizes here. This is called a nosy cup, or a cutout cup. Nosy. And the idea behind this is that you can see inside the cup on top, and you can see the liquid. So you know if it's actually getting to the child's mouth or their lips, because with these cups, you don't know. You don't know where it's at. Like, where is it going? Where I can't see it because it covers. So this cuts it out for the nose, and then you can see on top, you got to kind of stand over them where the liquid's going. Nose cups. Okay, so that's open cups a little bit. It's great to expose, and it's a really nice drinking skill because we have to move the water from the front to the back of our mouth, but there's no suction needed. You don't really need your lips, and it's just gravity is pushing it back, so you just kind of got to gauge the protection. Now, you could be really fast and you could cough, but we all cough sometimes, so we have to learn and figure out how to protect. And if you're concerned, talking to your child's medical team, doctor, maybe getting a feeding referral to see if there is a swallowing concern or a swallowing disorder, and other strategies could be helpful. But back to cups. Now let's get into straw cups. Straw cup is also a very natural, lifelong skill. This is my main water cup that I use. Straw cup. I have a cute little banana topper. So straws are similar to bottles, but my head is upright, right? If I had a bottle, like a baby bottle, right, I have to tip back, and then I'm using compression. And then my suction is that the bottle is all the way in the mouth, and my tongue is under the bottle and pulling at it. But a straw, what we want is it's on the lips. So how do I get the water out is my tongue pulls back. It pulls back, and that creates the vacuum to pull the liquid out. But what do I see happening sometimes with children with straws is how far it's in their mouth. Now, if they have a straw cup and they're trying to use their bottle drinking pattern or breast of pumping their tongue, and so they have to pump their whole jaw. You see how my jaw goes up and down? They're anchoring their tongue down. And their tongue is now not free. We want our tongue to be able to lift, that my tongue can go up to swallow. That's a mature swallow pattern. So if a child is drinking a straw cup and they're putting it in all the way up, here's a straw cup, right? And they're putting it all the way in, they're probably anchoring their tongue. And we don't want tongue, we want lips for straws. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. Some of them you can just find like a little straw. This is a learner straw cup that has this anti-gravity valve. So if they tip it, they're still going to get liquid because the base of the straw goes up into where the liquid is. So that can be helpful for them to understand that it's not a bottle, but we're not supposed to tip it really. But if they're putting their lips all the way up, they're probably anchoring their tongue a little bit. So a couple of things you could do is you could cut the straw, make it a little bit smaller so it's just lips. There's also lip blocks that they sell, which just look like a little cap that blocks, so it only goes on the lips and you can't keep going in more. This is a very easy squeezable, nice, it's called a take and toss. And I have this hard spout. Now, usually this little thing is there so you can't pull the straw out. I like to put that there as a reminder. So you just go up to that little level to help the child to understand how far they go in. You could just put your fingers right there and block it to help them learn how to do lips. But straw is a skill. So how do we teach children how to use straw cups initially is usually a squeezy, right? To have a cup that can squeeze. This, again, like I said, is just a very affordable option. And you can get like a 4-pack of this for maybe like $5 or less. And it's squeezable. So as soon as it hits their lips, you can squeeze it out. And then they're going to get some of it in there. There's like honey bear cups that look like a little bear that you can squeeze. But it's basically just kind of squeezable. Any like standard little juice box is squeezable. Sometimes they squeeze too hard, right? Sometimes they make a push straw. So this is a type of cup that has this little straw in here. And once you close it, then let me show you with water. It actually uses a top valve. Instead of it being squeezable, it's a hard cup. It has this little button on top that says push. Can you see that? And if I push, it shoots the water up. And so you can leave it like right on the edge right there. And then as soon as their lips touch, you can push it. And this is, it's called Ritual is the brand of this cup if you're interested. So that's how we can teach initial straw drinking. Or one thing I also like to do is to plug a straw. So if you had a cup and you just put it in an open cup, like a straw, you can use a metal straw. There's lots of different types of straws. You just plug it with your finger, and then you put the bottom side of a liquid in the child's mouth and let go, they're going to get it that way. And so then they're going to learn that, straw, and then they can close their lips around it, and then they might try to suck. They might try to blow. A lot of children like to make bubbles and blow. Oh, I got bubbles here. So it's not about, like, that's okay. It's just an opposite thing, and they're playing with it as a cause and effect. That's fine. And so sometimes there are straw spouts that have silicone, and some families I speak to are concerned. I actually saved this one so you can see. If children are biting through this, then that's our indicator that probably silicone is not for them right now because they're biting too hard. Some children chew it and break it off entirely. So their jaw is actually needing a lot of, they're probably grinding, or they're just needing a lot of like input into their jaw. So using a metal straw or a different type of cup that doesn't have a soft silicone, because that might just be their indicator that they want to chew it, and then they're not necessarily sucking. And that typically is the ones that kids like to hold around in their mouth. And they're walking around like this, they're talking around it, or they're breathing around it, and that's not really what we want. Okay, let me see. That's about everything I have for cups right now. So cups, there's a lot of cups out there, and it's a huge marketing thing. Parents will buy different cups thinking that this is what I need to have my child learn how to drink. But it's about understanding their mouth. What does that mean for drinking? And what works? If it works, you don't have to change it. That's fine. But we want children to be able to learn how to drink for their hydration purposes, to be able to drink if they go to a daycare, a preschool, a school program throughout the day, to stay hydrated, and this is a lifelong skill. And so there's lots of cups out there. Sippy cups and open cups, all different kinds, just any cup, right? And straw cups, which can look lots of different ways. And it could just be like a standard straw, like mine. And so if you feel overwhelmed by cups, I get it. There's a lot of cups out there. Hopefully today you have a better idea of understanding that it's not just the product itself, but what purpose and function it serves to help you guide and make better choices. That's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching the Airplane Spoon podcast, where we discuss topics around feeding and drinking and children and babies and their lifelong process to being happy and successful eaters and drinkers. So remember, you're doing an amazing job supporting your child on their feeding journey. You got this. Love, enjoy, and eat.